Syy siihen, että teen tämän videon, juontuu toissa iltaan, jolloin jostain kumman syystä rukoilin, että jos on olemassa joku video, jonka haluat, Herra, että käännän, niin anna se minulle, tuo se minulle. Eli ensinnäkään mä en oikein ymmärrä, miksi mä rukoilin tällaista, se jotenkin vaan tuli. Ja sitten toisekseen, mulla ei ollut ollenkaan sellainen ajatus, että mä nyt sitten lähden penkomaan. Tyyliin surffaileen netissä ja sitten vähän arpomaan, että oisko tää sellainen ja oisko tää. Vaan mä jotenkin jätin sen juurikin näin, että anna se mulle. No seuraavana päivänä mä tein ihan jotain muita juttuja. Ihan totaalisesti muita juttuja. En miettinyt sitä rukousta ja huomaan sitten, että okei, mä oon saanut viestin mun ystävältä, jossa on linkki Xään ja siellä on Mosab Hassan Yousefin puheesta pala. Ja mä jaon kanssa sitä sitten eteenpäin ja mietin, että no joo, tämänhän voisi muuten Faseen laittaa, että jos mä nyt vaan onnistun sen sieltä X:stä ottaa, niin lataan sen videon, niin sitten sen voisi kääntää ja joku kommentoi, joo, se olisi hyvä, laitetaan eteenpäin. No se ei vaan onnistunut ja sitten mä ajattelin, no pakkohan se on olla YouTuben puolella ja löysin kokonaisuudessaan. Ja sitten yhtäkkiä tulee tämä, että mitäs mä eilen rukoilin? Tämä mun ystävä ei todellakaan tiennyt mitään mun rukouksesta. Enkä mäkään ollut viettänyt yhtään netissä aikaa, että mä lähtisin tosiaan kelailemaan, että mikä voisi olla sellainen hyvä ajankohtainen video. Vaan tää tuli. Se on tallennettu 3 kuukautta sitten. Aika monelta voinut mennä ohitte. Mies oli EU-parlamentissa puhumassa ja jotenkin mulla on nyt sellainen tuntu, että en minäkään tiedä, miksi oli tarkoitus, että tämä käännetään. Mä oon nyt kuitenkin sen kääntänyt ja tässä seuraavassa näette ja kuulette sen. Mä en halua tämän asian tiimoilta tässä kohtaa sanoa mitään muuta, vaan mä toivon, että nyt itse kukin jotenkin vähän kuulostelee. Resonoiko tämä? Tässä yleisessä tilanteessa, jossa me ollaan ja kun me katsotaan, että mitä Lähi-idässä tapahtuu ja minkälaisia kommentteja tulee eri maiden päämiehiltä ja mitä siellä suunnitellaan, resonoiko tämä? Auttaako tämä jollakin tapaa meitä ymmärtää jotain? Mennäs kuuntelemaan.
Thank you for finding the time to listen. I see many members absent, unfortunately. I thought this would be a great opportunity to share first-hand experience, and most importantly, I'm nothing but eyewitness. And it looks like many people want to decide on behalf of the children in the Middle East without listening to the children, without listening to a child of that conflict. It's not important to have someone who have lived it, to provide first-hand experience and information, so when they make their decisions on our behalf, on behalf of the children in the Middle East, they don't make mistake. For example, by funding criminals for decades from the public money that has been advancing terrorism and chaos that brought us to this low point of destruction and barbarism. And of course, none of them would take responsibility. They want to sit in comfort and decide on behalf of this generation and the next generations. It's not important for them to come and take a seat for half an hour and listen. But what can we do? This is part of this war, a war of narratives. And there is only one truth. But many have been compromised by the Qatari money, and yes, by the Qatari money, the Arab oil money, the Muslim money, and they have been serving many masters. When they serve many masters, this means that they have no truth. I was born back in 1978. I was only 10 years old when the first Palestinian Intifada started. My father was one of the founders of Hamas. And my family taught me that I was Palestinian. But they never said why I was Palestinian. Like today, millions of people believe to be Palestinians as an ethnic group, but in reality, they are not. And we have tens of millions around the world who say free Palestine, while in reality, Palestine never existed, except as a colonial entity against the indigenous of the land. I'm not saying that there were no Arabs in that region, but for some reason, Arabs were allowed to take their caravans from every destination in Arabia with no political borders to come and profit from the British mandate of Palestine. But the Jews who had to go through the Holocaust and the ethnic cleansing on the hands of Ottoman Empire for approximately 400 years, then the ethnic cleansing in Europe, then the Holocaust, they did not have the right to take the boat and escape the hell of Nazism to come and find a safe place where they could survive. This is a crime. It's colonialism. But for all the Arab and Muslim invaders who came to profit, who did not have any connection to the land, that was legitimate. So I was supposed to believe that I am a Palestinian. But what makes a Palestinian, nobody has the answer. What makes the Palestinian different than the Egyptian or the Jordanian? It's not a human race. It's not a distinct language. It's not a religion. It is nothing but a violent ideology that was established as a hostile movement to annihilate the Jewish people from that land. The continuous Islamic, and I insist to say Islamic, attempt to kill the Jewish people. And that brings us to the ideological dimension that many of us are in denial. Why? Because we have 2 billion Muslims around the world and we don't want to piss them off. So most of us stick our head in the sand in denial. While it's in the Quran, it's in the Hadith, that it's an Islamic belief based on the Islamic most trusted sources, that the end times will not come and the Mahdi, that's the savior of the Muslims, will not return until the Muslims annihilate all the Jewish people, not only in Israel, but worldwide. This is not only human delusion. They have been acting on it. It's a legislation. Many out there believe that Allah gave them the authority to punish the Jewish people. First, Allah chose the Jewish people. It was His chosen ones. But for disobedience, Allah wanted to punish the Jewish people. And now the Muslims functioning as the sword of Allah on earth to punish the Jewish people and all the non-Muslims who don't submit to Islam. This is the Islamic law. And all those who try to sell the West a peaceful version of Islam, they are liars and they are lying. And their claim is baseless. Okay, this is too controversial, and I did not come here to say things about Islam, but this is very important to understand as a foundation of this conflict. Because if we really want to find a solution, then we need to understand the dimensions of the conflict. And the ideological dimension of this conflict is the most significant one, in my humble opinion. This is how I was conditioned. As a Muslim, then as a Palestinian, and I think both identities are false. They stole our individuality as children. We were born free, children of earth, children of the divine. And they gave us false identity. They said, you're a Palestinian now. Fight for this identity. It's so important to you. And who created this? A con artist from Egypt, born in Egypt, with an Egypt accent. His name Yasser Arafat. A global terrorist who wanted to globalize the Intifada and hijack commercial airplanes and blow up athletes at Munich Olympics. And we can go on and on of the Palestinian global terrorism as a mean for political and financial gain. He never been there. No evidence. With the Egyptian birth certificate. And this is the father of the Palestinian revolution. The most corrupt revolution on earth that does not have concern towards the Arab or the Jewish children in that region. Please notice, my ethnicity is not Palestinian. We are Arabs of Judea and Samaria. That's an ethnic group. This is ethnicity. But Yasser Arafat did not want us to go to school. This is why, when the first Palestinian Intifada started back in 1987, the masked men used to come to our school and ask us to leave, to go to the checkpoints and throw stones at the Israeli army. Because for Yasser Arafat, it was very clever to pay a handful of masked men, we didn't know who they were, to come to school and send children to the checkpoints to get shot, or at least to confront an Israeli tank with a rock. This image attracted the globe and attracted so many people to see the bravery of a child throwing a rock at a very advanced weapon. So many people sympathized with Yasser Arafat in his movement. They funded Yasser Arafat. And Yasser Arafat got addicted to power, to fame, to money, to prestige, and now this became his game. He assassinated his political rivals. He self-appointed, or he appointed himself as the leader of the revolution. And he built billions of dollars. Where did that come from? The Arab oil money and the European countries who funded him to try to silence him. This is the game. The more money you give this corrupt revolution, the more they will sacrifice children. Not only Jewish children, but also Arab children. And of course, people in the West cannot understand a culture that is willing to sacrifice its own children. But I'm a living example. When my father had to choose between his ideology, between his hypothetical Allah that he is worshipping, and his son, he chose the cause to maintain and protect his public image that he has invested more than 60 years in falsehood, false identity of a Palestinian, of an Islamist. This is not who I am, and it's a choice to know my roots as a child of the divine, as a child of the universe, as a child of earth. That today I choose the highest interest of humanity, not the interest of the tribe. That this is Palestinian, etc. Who cares? And how many children are they willing to sacrifice for this sick ideology? And today we have so many sellouts in the West who scream out loud, "Free, free Palestine," forsaking the hostages. Naturally, when we have a hostage situation, humanity should get united to say, "Free the hostages," the most logical thing. They represent all of us. They're just civilians that they have been kidnapped from their backyards, from their living rooms. Infants, children, elders, Holocaust survivors, Muslim farmers from a liberal community that actually believed in coexistence and peace. And the entire world suddenly got united behind a concept. They choose a concept over humanity. It's so obvious that our crisis is bring the hostages and save the children from those who have hijacked the entire society and booby-trapped one of the most populated areas in the Middle East to kill civilians for political and financial gain. But for some reason, many of us are confused, and we have been choosing an ideology, a concept over humanity. And of course, they have been posing as they have the higher moral ground. They all speak on behalf of the children, of the victims of this conflict. Well, how can you be speaking on behalf of the children, but in the meantime, you haven't condemned Hamas? On one hand, they support the resistance. They claim that this is a legitimate resistance against occupation. But we tell them there was never Palestine. It was never as a country. It's not a people. And if there is no such thing, how can it be occupation? Usually you occupy something that is a country, that is an ethnic group, that is a nation. But what, you occupy something in the air, a concept that never existed? In fact, Israel fought against colonialism. They paid in blood the bills, and they earned their independence back in 1948. Only the Jewish people fought against colonialism. And prior to the British, they were the Ottoman Empire, which basically invaded the entire region. And that's it. There is no Palestine in between. A colonial entity that existed from 1918 to 1947 or 1948. That's approximately 25 years of a lifespan. So, why what so-called Palestinians believe that they have they have inherited such entity? Well, the Jewish people also were called Palestinians during that time. All the residents of that region had a Palestinian passport. Druze, Christian, Arabs, Jews, all ethnicities. So what makes now only the Arabs unique to this identity? It's madness. And so many people are believing. So many believers. This is what we are dealing with. So they inverted the narrative. And we don't need to look way back in the past. We can just look into our lifetime. Since October 7. Savages. They broke the fence. They went into peaceful communities. They wiped out more than 20 peaceful communities based on their religion and based on their ethnicity, based on their race. And that's the very definition of a genocide. Genocide is not defined by head counts. To say, let's say, if we kill more than 5,000 people, this becomes a genocide. No, genocide is defined by why the people have been killed. And the only people who were killed based on their religion and ethnicity are the Jewish people on October 7. The victims in Gaza, they are not being killed because of their religious or ethnic background. For all those who claim to say what's happening in Gaza is a genocide based on the head count, they are contradicting the dictionary and the reality. Israel has been doing everything within their ability to minimize the civilian casualty by giving people 2 weeks in advance, revealing the military plans. Evacuate this area while the terrorists evacuate with the civilians. Dressed up like women, like civilians. It's very obvious for any person with intelligence to see that the terrorists have been trying to maximize the civilian casualty. Then they did not stop there. They exaggerated and they lied about the statistics. Then humanitarian organizations, the United Nations, the European Parliament, everybody considered the Hamas narrative and the Hamas lie as a source. They haven't been on the ground. They did not count the numbers. They don't have the birth certificates or the death certificates. But somehow they reached the point of saying 40,000 casualties. But even if that was true, why are they surprised? In the most populated area, when terrorists hijacked schools, hospitals, mosques, churches, every sacred zone, they did not leave the civilians even with one safe zone to go. And since the beginning of the war, I said evacuate the civilians. Pressure Egypt to open the border so the most vulnerable civilians can evacuate and we go in and eradicate this cancer because we cannot afford another Gaza war. This is not the first Gaza war. It's the fifth. And every time the terrorists sacrificed civilians, we rewarded them with what? With money and power and legitimacy. So every war, they came back stronger. And this last war, they doubled down, they tripled down on this evil practice. And now they are expecting from the West, from the free world, to come on its knees and beg them, please don't hurt more children and we will give you whatever you want. You want a Palestinian state? We will give you a Palestinian state. Even that means at the expense of already established democracy. That is not only a democracy for the Jewish people, but also for Muslims, Arabs, Druze, Christians, all type of people. So we have now governments that have been pressuring Israel, blaming Israel, delegitimizing Israel, not realizing that Hamas game and the Palestinian game has been to delegitimize Israel, to discredit Israel, to criminalize and demonize Israel, while in reality this is not the truth. So the more we believe them, the more we will get divided. Because I don't think any power on earth will be able to push Israel to the point where Israel will have to compromise its security and the future of the Jewish people. We all know that this is a red line. So how can we pressure Israel to do the impossible? To give up security, territory, and just give it to irresponsible lunatics, psychopaths, and tell them, here you go. Take power, take money, and whenever you wish, you can just invade us, take hostages, kill our people. There is no leader in Israel that can afford doing this. If I was the leader of Israel, I will not agree to it, even if it means total and absolute sanction from the globe. And not to mention that Israel is a superpower. So why push a superpower, a democratic system, all the way to the corner in favor of no people, in favor of political gangs that does not have even a legitimate leadership? Their main crisis, that they cannot agree on one leadership. I wish that it was only a snake with one head, that we can actually try to reason with it. But it has 99 heads. So we are going nowhere with this. But of course, many of us say, then what is the solution? And I'm not here to draw a very dark image, but we need to understand the reality of the situation. And this is why I talk you on multiple dimensions, and this is not the end of the story. This is just barely the tip of the iceberg of this 1400 years of Jewish hatred. And I think as long as Allah is a legitimate authority, and as long as Allah wants the Jews killed, then there are going to be a bunch of people out there going after the Jewish people. If we allow them to kill the Jewish people today, tomorrow they will have another problem. Maybe the next time it's not Palestine, it could be Andalusia. Because also Andalusia is a Muslim land according to Islamic law, and the Muslims are required to fight until they liberate this Islamic territory. Every mosque around the world is an Islamic land. And I dare you to try to shut down one mosque in Europe, especially if they mix or don't separate religion and state or mosque and state. This is the challenge. And this is where they contradict a fundamental of the Western or most Western constitutions, that no one is above the civil constitution. But Allah and the mosque are two authorities above. And Muslims don't separate between mosque and state. Now, they are in violation of the laws. Now you as lawmakers, go and try to say this mosque violated the law, we want to close the mosque. They suddenly become angry. They have a cause. And they could turn violent. And they could all get unified behind their angry cause, the same way we see them angry on the streets for Palestine. Even to the degree when there is some idiot on the street burning a Quran, They go against the entire nation, against the government, against the diplomats worldwide, boycotting and sanctioning and protesting. And you try to tell them this was just an individual. It's his responsibility. It's not the responsibility of the entire people of the country. But they insist on violence by the means of sword and by the means of intimidation. So the situation in Andalusia could be next, and we are living the modern-day Islamic invasion. Many here, leftists, or they claim to be liberals, Democrats, they want equal rights. And we simply tell them, what about equal responsibility? Decent citizens show responsibility, hence they have equal rights. But criminals, terrorists, invaders, illegals, they haven't shown any responsibility. So why they are entitled for equal rights? What do we do to the criminals who violate the laws? Don't we imprison them and strip them from all their rights? Why? Because they are criminals. Keep in mind, Andalusia and Palestine, they're very similar concepts. If Hamas and Palestinians succeed in pressuring the world to manifest their Palestine, which I don't think is a possibility, then there is going to be another concept, a different name, another angry cause to justify their violence. And I don't want to see this. I say it's their freedom to be Muslims, but keep Islam in Mecca. Keep the mosque in Mecca. Here in the West, I don't want to see the West turning into an Islamic continent. I love diversity. When I come to Europe, I want to feel that it's Europe. And if those who really admire Mecca, then why don't they just migrate to Mecca? Stay there, where no women rights. Their society does not give women any rights. They are property. And when you cancel half the society, what is a society without women? You kill all the creativity. Then there is sexual repression, and the sexual repression will automatically lead to violence, to terrorism. And this is the psychological connection. Then they are attracted to come to the West. Why? Because they see freedom. Women are free. Hence, the society is free and more healthy. So they come attracted to the freedoms. But then suddenly, they want to turn it into Mecca, where non-Muslims are not allowed to enter the city. Where is their tolerance? Where are the temples? Where are the synagogues? Where are the churches that are in Mecca? Why don't you allow the non-Muslims enter the city of Mecca? The signs are so huge on the entrance of Mecca, say Muslims and non-Muslims, 2 free ways. This is their approach. This is their tolerance. Tomorrow they could do the same thing here in Europe and everywhere in the world. So we need to be aware. We need to be aware of the fundamentals of this problem in order for us to provide good solutions. If they want to worship in the mosque, this is okay, but they must separate mosque and state. If they want to worship, they have the freedom for worship, but we don't want to see gatherings, political gatherings by the name of Islam, praying in the thousands, making political statement. They are in violation, immediately in violation. If they want to worship, close your door. It's your devotion. It's your relationship between you and your God, between you and your Allah. I don't have a problem with that. But don't intimidate the people with your prayer. And we don't want, in the near future, any Palestinian state. The children don't care for a political entity. They don't care. What they need a peaceful environment They need a responsible leadership that does not abuse them or indoctrinate them. And as long as we continue to fail the children in favor of these criminals, the Middle East conflict will continue forever. And I think all the attempts to try to pressure Israel to give up its security and its freedoms for such political gangs, this is not going to help the situation either. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for giving me this podium.
Kun mä kuuntelin Mosab Hassan Yousefia, niin mulle tuli muutamia asioita mieleen, jonka mä sit haluan tässä jakaa. Ensinnäkin mä ajattelen, että onko mahdollista, että tällä videolla niin me jotenkin ehkä enemmän, laajemmin, syvemmin ymmärretään, että miten syvästä kuoleman kulttuurista Islamin uskossa on kyse tässä konseptissa. Että me oikeasti ymmärrettäisiin, mä en puhu nyt niistä ihmisistä, vaan Islamin uskosta, siitä konseptista. Että me ymmärrettäisiin sen demoninen luonne kaikella tapaa, yhteiskunnan tällaisena periaatteena, mutta myöskin sitten ajatellen tätä Lähi-idän tilannetta, mutta myöskin ihan maailmanlaajuisesti. Ja sitten mulle tuli mieleen tällainen, että isossa kuvassahan me eletään ihmiskunnan ja koko maailman sellaisena, kun me ne tunnetaan, niin siellä loppumetreillä. Ja mä näen, että ensinnäkin Israel kansakuntana, niin hehän käyvät omaa painiaan Jumalan kanssa, että he kuulisi Jumalan äänen, että he tulisi siihen Jumal-yhteyteen. Nimittäin siihen ollaan menossa. Eli Jumala valmistaa nyt kansansa tuota tilannetta varten, jolloin he katsoo hänen, jonka he on lävistäneet. Ja tuo hetki on siunaukseksi koko maailmalle. Mutta se, mitä he käy tällä hetkellä, on se, että he turvautuu monenlaisiin toisiin ratkaisuihin, ei vielä Jumalaan. Eli se on tietyllä lailla Jumalan vastustamista toistaiseksi. Ja me muu maailma, vastustetaan ihan yhtä lailla Jumalaa. Sillä tapaa, että tehdään mahdollisimman vaikeaksi Jumalan kansan olosuhteet, kyseenalaistetaan ja juurikin ihan väkivaltaan saakka ja painostetaan ja vaaditaan ja kaikkea tällaista. Ollaan viemässä heidän olemassaolonsa oikeutusta pois. Niin tämä on Jumalan vastustamista. Tämä on Jumalan vastustamista siinä mielessä, että kaikki se, mitä me nähdään nyt tapahtuvaksi, niin sehän on profetioiden toteutumista, koska Jumala valvoo, että hänen sanansa toteutuu. Että tämä koko pakka on paljon isommissa käsissä. Ja jos ajatellaan saatanan näkökulmasta, niin sillähän on nyt hirveä kiire koettaa estää, että juutalaisia olisi edes olemassa ja että heille tulisi sellainen tilanne, jolloin he voi sanoa, kun Jeesus sanoi juutalaisille, että vasta edes te näette minut vasta kun sanotte, siunattu olkoon hän, joka tulee Herran nimeen. Niin jotta tätä ei tapahtuisi, koska Jeesushan astuu silloin öljymäelle. Eli tämä lyhyesti tavallaan sen sielunvihollisen näkökulmasta. Ja sitten kun ihminen on laittomuuden lapsi, eli kieltää, torjuu Jumalan, niin silloin hän palvelee tätä demonista ajatusta. Kaikki on Jumalan käsissä loppuviimein, niin Israelin käy hyvin. Mitä sitä ennen tapahtuu, niin se on todennäköisesti vähän eri tarina, mutta se, että loppuviimein Jumala on liiton Jumala, niin hän on luvannut Israelin pelastaa. Mutta sitten taas meille, jotka ei olla osa sitä Jumalan valittua kansaa, mä puhun ihan fyysisesti, konkreettisesti. Eli meitä kutsutaan Raamatussa pakanoiksi. Niin kun me vastustetaan ja yritetään jakaa Jerusalemia ja maata ja tosiaan tehdä Jumalan kansan niin kuin elämä maailmanlaajuisesti niin kuin tosi tukalaksi, niin se ei jää rankaisematta. Ja Jumala ei ole muille kansoille luvannut sitä, mitä hän on luvannut Israelin kansalle. Joten tämä on tosi vakava paikka. Ja kyllä mä uskon, että tuossa äskeisessä puheessa voi olla jotakin sellaista kauraa, jolla me työstetään myös näitä kuvioita. Että me nähdään, kuinka muun muassa islam uskontona sokeuttaa ihmiset vihaan ja toteuttaa tavallaan tätä meidän pakanoiden juutalaisvihaa silleen kärjessä. Mutta nyt täytyy muistaa, että ei tämä juutalaisviha mitään sellaista tuontitavaraa ole, vaan se juutalaisviha löytyy ihan täältä koto-Suomesta. Muun muassa media ja monet johtohenkilöt muokkaa ihmisten ajatuksia siihen suuntaan, että Israel on jatkuvasti valtiona ja kansana suurennuslasin alla ja nimenomaan sillä lailla suurennuslasin alla, että se filtteri on aina se, että syytetään ja tuomitaan ja viedään oikeuksia ja näin. Eli se antijudaismi, antisionismi, antisemitismi, mikä sen nimi nyt sitten on kunkin mielessä, ehkä moni ei sitä edes miellä, että kuitenkin näitä ajatuksia kannattaa, niin se on jotenkin sisään asennettu ihmisissä, että se ei tavallaan paljon tarvi sitä pensaa sinne liekkeihin ja sitten se taas roihuaa. Että kyllä tämä on semmoinen itsetutkiskelun paikkakin ihan kansakuntana. No sitten mä haluan tuoda tämän hengellisen ulottuvuuden. Mä ajattelen, että meillä uskovilla on kuitenkin sellainen, miten mä sanoisin, mahdollisuus, tavallaan kyky astua tämän kuvion ulkopuolelle siten, että me nähdään se isossa kuvassa. Ja muistetaan, että Jeesus kuoli koko maailman synnin vuoksi. Kaikkien ihmisten. Ja vaikka Jumala kannustaa meitä siunaamaan omaa kansansa ja rukoilemaan rauhaa Jerusalemiin, niin se ei tarkoita sitä, että me jätetään jotenkin muut, nämä viholliset jotenkin tästä Jumalan pelastussuunnitelmasta ulkopuolelle. Eli meitä ei ole kutsuttu todellakaan vihaamaan heitä, jotka vihaa Israelia, vaan meidät on kutsuttu tukemaan Israelia ja yhtä aikaa myöskin, mä otan tuosta Raamatusta yhden kohdan, myöskin muistamaan heitä, ketkä on nyt vihollisia. Mä eilen lueskelin illalla vielä ennen nukkumaan menoa sananlaskuista, lukua 24. Ja täällä sanotaan näin: älä iloitse vihamiehesi langetessa, älköön sydämesi riemuitko hänen suistuessaan kumoon. Että vaikka Jumala on sanonut sanassa, että hän ei jätä rankaisematta sellaista, joka toimii hänen kansansa vastaan ja tekee hänen kansansa olon tukalaksi ja jakaa sitä maata tai vaatii sitä ja Jerusalemia ja näin, niin eihän se sitä tarkoita, että me ruvetaan sitten ilkkumaan ja ole jotenkin kokea jotain syvää mielihyvää siitä, jos nyt vaikka hamasilaisille tapahtuu jotain ikävää. Me ei nyt tiedetä, lähiaika tulee todistamaan, että mihin nämä kaikki lausunnot, joita päämiehet nyt latoo, niin johtaako mihinkään, mitä tästä nyt syntyy. Mutta joka tapauksessa oli se aikajana mikä tahansa, niin me emme suinkaan Jeesukseen uskovina ilku niille, jotka joutuvat omaan ahdinkoonsa sen vuoksi, että ovat toimineet Jumalan kansaa sortavalla tavalla ja Jumalan maata sortavalla tavalla. Jotain tämän kaltaisia ajatuksia tämä video synnytti ainakin itsessäni. Ja kuten sanottua, niin heitän nyt tämän ikään kuin pallon sille puoleen lasia. Jokainen miettii sitten, että oliko tämä johonkin niin kuin tarpeeseen. Avasko tämä jotain? Ja juurikin tämä, että millaisia asioita se laukaisee itsessä. Sitä, että me ymmärretään asioita ehkä syvemmin ja se, että se aktivoisi meitä evankeliumin ja esirukoustyöhön, niin evankeliumin eteenpäin viemiseen ja rukoustyöhön. Voimallisemmin ja voimallisemmin. Tällaisia ajatuksia. Palataan taas. Moi moi!